Don't worry, I'll probably disappear for another 3 months after this video. Hello there, it's your boy Sweet, and I have a powerful question for you today. Sentience. What is it? Am I sentient? Is this couch sentient? Are these animals sentient? Well, yes, no, and that's what we're here to find out today. Scholars maintain that sentience is the capacity to be aware of feelings and sensations. Here on the famous 5-star paradise Poopers, I'm surrounded by adorable animal villagers and Tiffany. Let's study animal sentience. Let's see what separates the animals from the animals. You might be wondering what my qualifications are. Well, not to worry, I have a PhD from the University of Poopers. We'll start off the only way that makes sense, applying the scientific method, courtesy of the legendary Dr. Danner McNanners. Step 1, fuck around. Step 2, find out. Let's start with the obvious information. The animals talk. They are homeowners. They have at least a cursory understanding of bartering and the economy. I have proof that at least some of them have the ability to read. They can laugh, they can cry, they can experience fear, and they can experience joy. They can even get surprised when given a beret, and then get excited about said beret. This diagram in the museum suggests a sort of evolutionary divergence, meaning some of the animals began to break off and evolve differently from their genetic ancestors. Perhaps the most well-known example of this in history is Darwin's finches. During Darwin's travels to the Galapagos Islands, he discovered several different species of finch that shared a common ancestor. They lived on varying diets and had beaks that differed in shape and size, reflecting their diets. With that in mind, what changed in these animals' habitat to force them to evolve so significantly? And more importantly, what do these divergent animals think of the other members of their species, the ones that haven't evolved? When fishing in small ponds, a skilled fisher can catch a frog. But the keenly aware will realize that the frogs from the pond are, shall we say, different from the frogs who move into the neighborhood and call our islands home. As I reeled in this frog, a thought popped into my head. I caught a frog. Or it's a new neighbor, and I have some apologizing to do. I decided to bring the frog to Blathers, who runs the local museum. He's an expert on these sorts of things, so maybe he can give us some insight. Interestingly, Blathers revealed something we already knew. Frogs converse with one another. Ribbity ribbit, I think you're splendid. Blathers went on to say that he had no idea what the frogs were saying, so does that imply that he doesn't understand Huck? Huck very easily converses with us on a daily basis. Do the animals need to learn different dialects of animal language? Blathers promptly displayed the frog in the museum. That frog was on display for us to admire, but I couldn't help but think. What separates the frogs we mercilessly hook and reel in from their aquatic habitat from the beautiful frogs that we befriend? From the frogs we call family, like my son, Huck. I decided the only possible scientific way forward in this study would be to give Huck the frog as a present. While Huck is a gentle, loving soul, his response slightly alarmed me. Look at that little frog go. He acknowledges that this is a member of his species. I've always wanted a pet like that. That's an interesting response. I've never thought, ooh, I want a pet human. That just sounds weird. I don't like that. With the frog delivered to Huck, I decided we'll leave him alone with it for a while and check back in on him and see if there are any developments. Alongside Huck's pet frog, I gave Admiral a birdcage. Presumably, Admiral would prefer to live in his actual house as opposed to a birdcage, but nonetheless, we'll see if he displays the birdcage in his house. I also gave Tammy a giant stuffed yellow teddy bear. Teddy bears make excellent gifts for children and deranged adults, so will Tammy proudly display this in her home, or will she stuff it in the closet like a real doll? Only time will tell. In the meantime, I hopped on a flight to the nearby island of Mochi Milk, which is home of Christina, a fellow scientist and an honorary member of the Tuxedo Gang. Christina suggested that I observe Flurry for this experiment. I decided to visit Flurry in her home. Based on my initial interactions, Flurry seems like a very nice hamster, but I quickly noticed a dark secret. Without any sort of human intervention, Flurry is keeping a hamster imprisoned in her home, perpetually cursed to run on a hamster wheel. This cage is a lasting symbol of a pecking order. Being inside Flurry's home conjured up traumatic memories from a battle on Poopers. Apart from being a world-class scientist, I also have experience in demon containment and extermination, so after we cut the cameras, Christina and I dealt with the demonic presence the same way I dealt with Patty. The separation of sentient and wild animals is not just a phenomenon that occurs within the villagers' houses. Those who are observant may notice wild animals in the wild. For example, on this bulletin board, during the day we can see birds, and at night we can see owls. These creatures are clearly very different from, say, Admiral or Blathers, but why? I believe I've developed a hypothesis based on my initial studies. If the museum's depiction of evolutionary divergence is true, it seems as though there is a size disparity that comes with sentience and intelligence. Wild animals remain small, they remain outdoors and wild, and retain most of their animal traits. Intelligent ones walk upright, maintain a similar height to humans, and live indoors. We have several studies for which we are now awaiting results. In the interim, I decided it would be a good idea to take a more active approach. This is Mac. Mac, of course, is a dog. He's beautiful. He's very into fitness. Mac is similar to our previous test subject, Flurry. Mac has a doghouse within his residence, and within that doghouse seems to be another dog. One that doesn't seem to be nearly as civilized as the other animals. We can assume that this is Mac's pet. The keenly observant also notice that there is a dog bed in the corner of the room. With this information in mind, we're going to take Mac outside and run a controlled experiment. We'll have to fence him in to ensure that no contaminants enter the experiment. Don't worry, he has all his exercise equipment outside. He is more than happy in this area. For the first leg of the experiment, I've set up a table. On one side, a human meal. On the other, a dog dish. Let's see where Mac goes. Will he adhere to his more evolved, more human-like brain, or will his canine instincts take over? The cameras are set up to monitor him, so let's do a time-lapse and see what happens. Score 1 for the animal instincts, much to my surprise. But of course, it wouldn't be very scientific of us to only do the experiment once, so let's keep waiting and see what happens next. Interestingly, Mac went for the human food on the second time. We'll of course need to continue observing for science. But first, I had to intervene in the experiment to switch the dishes to make sure that there wasn't any sort of bias going on in the experiment. And now back to time-lapse cam. After countless hours, unfortunately, I have to report that this experiment is inconclusive. Mac didn't go back to the table. Ever. On the following day, we returned to the enclosed testing area to try again. Mac initially chose the pet food, however, he promptly fell asleep in front of the dish, which seemed like a perfect segue into the next experiment. For the second test, I decided to set up a human bed and a bed designed for pets. This experiment was much more cut and dry. Mac immediately chose the human bed. I decided to back up the cameras and not disturb him from his sleep. He looked so peaceful, and that was enough for me for this experiment. Before we bring our study to a conclusion, let's check back in with our other test subjects. It's been over a month, and Huck still has the frog in his house. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. Huck doesn't really address the fact that it's there. Admiral displayed the bird cage in his house right near his stove. He stares at the bird within the cage every time he cooks. Tammy never displayed the giant teddy bear. It's possible that it was just too big for her house. I think we all learned something about animals and sentience today. And for me, the scientist, I think concluding this experiment became very introspective. Look at these models. If I'm a human, what are these? You can't say I'm a child because look, I have a beard and I also paid off a mortgage. And that led me to the biggest question of all, which still prevails. Why am I the only human on Poopers? Well, for that question, I think I do have an answer. I'll leave you with this enduring quote from the English author Samuel Johnson, and also the band Avenged Sevenfold. He who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and share the video. Poopers Season 2 is happening, I promise. Probably in January. P.S. I think they're cannibals, but that's another video. Alright, bye.